Okay, let's see. The first condition of flow is that...
Have you ever been playing a game when something just clicked? You weaved in and out of lanes while racing, managed to clear a room of enemies without taking a single hit, or just completely outplayed your opponents in a multiplayer match? At certain times, games can launch us into a state where actions feel automatic, and we're neither too challenged nor too much at ease. The game becomes something more than a game. It becomes hypnotic, intoxicating, and sometimes even more sensible or approachable than the real world. We have a lot of language for this. Sometimes we tell people that we were in the zone. Other times we say that someone was on fire. This state of automatic but nonetheless pleasurable activity does have a more academic name, and it's called flow. The term was coined by Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in his work Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. Csikszentmihalyi explains flow thusly: a sense that one's skills are adequate to cope with the challenges in a goal-directed, rule-bound action system that provides clear clues as to how one is performing. Concentration is so intense that there is no attention left over to think about anything irrelevant or to worry about problems. Self-consciousness disappears, and the sense of time becomes distorted. Any activity that produces such experiences is so gratifying that people are willing to do it for its own sake, with little concern for what they will get out of it, even when it is difficult or dangerous. On a broad level, the concept of flow states that there is an optimal level of human happiness, and it is a perfect experience where somebody is acting and doing something simply for the sake of doing that thing. There are no outside influences, no social pressures or ulterior motives. You simply do the thing in order to do the thing, and in doing it, you are made sublimely happy. On a more detailed level, Csikszentmihalyi does offer a list of associated criteria that helps us understand when a flow state is occurring or what can help it to occur. This includes things like having clear goals and feedback, having a balance between difficulty and personal skill, or a sense of control. Because games tend to take place in rule-based systems where feedback is immediate and challenge is at a premium, game design lends itself to the phenomenon, or we might even call it the philosophy, I guess, of flow incredibly well. By itself, this isn't a bad thing. Having a game ease you into a comfortable but still challenging experience makes for a really good time. But flow is something that is held up as a design goal to such an extent that it often ignores the other ways that games can help us achieve happiness in favor of something that's actually pretty cold when we examine it further. Let's talk about what games are, or at least let's talk about what I think games tend to be. They tend to be abstracted representations of actions or events. Chess, for instance, is a highly symbolic but logic-driven abstraction of war. A lot of this has to do with how we perceive the world. Specifically, unless there are extenuating circumstances, we tend to understand the world through our sense of sight more than any other sense. And because of this, unless we are attempting a strict one-to-one simulation, we often fall back to abstraction in games so that we can approximate the tension or challenge of an experience without completely recreating it. For instance, instead of fighting on a battlefield, we picture the pawns on a chessboard as foot soldiers in a ground war in order to approximate the experience of commanding an army. Most games tend to be incredibly spatial because of this. We navigate terrain, examine foes within the context of a space, and then we act in that space and within the rules of that space in order to achieve victory. This is why games like basketball require you to dribble the ball, or why football has offside positions. We are taking space and imposing rules in order to cultivate a pleasurable experience through a type of abstracted movement. However, games are also highly competitive, and because of this, we value notions of dominance or mastery. Mastery is about having total command over your body, or within a video game, a complete understanding of the system, such that you achieve a more complete type of play. We can sort of observe the thought process that goes into mastery when we play a title like Superhot. In there, slow motion not only allows us to better perceive our environment, but it also functions as a mechanical shorthand for a constant flow state that allows us to masterfully tackle obstacles. Because we have more time to observe the world before acting, we understand the space well beyond normal levels, and we comprehend how to navigate it so completely that we can assert complete dominance over our space and our enemies. Flow seeks to make this cognitive experience occur so quickly that there may as well be no thought at all. It is here that flow as a design concept begins to create issues. In order to design for flow, you need to design for mastery, and to design for mastery, you need to choose what is or is not important enough to master. More often than not, this comes down to spatial navigation. This is why people talk about tight controls all the time, and when they talk about that, all they're talking about is having movement that is responsive and coherent to them, so that they sort of understand it. And they want this because it allows them to better assert their authority over the game space. Flow conceptualizes an ideal form of play where mastery is achieved because that is the most optimal experience. And it is the most optimal experience because it is the apex of being powerful. In her piece, Against Flow, critic Lana Polanski notes that, to be in a flow state is to be in a very mechanical state of being. It's achieving the kind of ludic transcendence that concretist artists were, whether they know it or not, pushing in their manifestos. It is a place that is not just pure feeling, but beyond feeling. A place to escape from the hardships of life, to not be challenged with too complex obstacles. And it's scientific. Flow is something that can be studied, quantified, reproduced, and adjusted depending on a relationship between the exigencies of a game and the player's scaling skill. Flow, for all of its talk about a sublime experience, when applied to game design, it's ultimately something that is mathematical. It is parsable and formulaic. It's a curated experience that drops the player into a value system where escapism and power are the most important thing, and there's no concern with any, it doesn't want you to wrestle with emotional content. And that's because emotions aren't anything that's masterable. But inputs and other things like that, those are. You can master a control, but you can't really master yourself or your feelings. The only emotion that Flow wants to put the player in is pleasure. It's designing for fun. It's designing for a peak premium experience of fun. It's masturbatory and seeks only to create a weird type of techno pleasure drome and not anything that actually begs greater engagement from a player. Remember, flow is a state where extra thought or concern for what you are doing or getting out of an experience doesn't exist. For Csikszentmihalyi and designers who really enjoy flow, the optimal experience is an unquestioning one. I fundamentally disagree that the best experience is one that doesn't require the player to think at all or feel anything other than pleasure. I don't think games are special, but I do think they achieve one thing much more easily than other media, and that's embodiment. Games allow us to inhabit situations or individuals, and especially bodies, and we are able to inhabit things that aren't like ourselves, and we do this in pretty radical ways. And because of this, games are highly potent with potential for engendering empathy. Let's imagine for a moment that design centered on eliciting healthy emotional responses from a player. Let's imagine that there's a philosophy that understands the ability to toss a player into a distinct world is also it's an opportunity to do more than just get them into a slavish pleasure state. Imagine talking about controls not just in terms of how easy they are to master, but how they intermingle with game scenarios or meld together with what's happening on screen to not just emulate actions, but also induce or create certain feelings. Loose controls might convey confusion, for instance, and limited stamina in a game might not just be there to dictate the rhythm and flow of combat. It might be there also to create feelings of discomfort or fear. We might see something like swift action and inputs aligning with something like feelings of determination or bravery. We are confident and the player character is confident, therefore our controls are confident. Flow discounts all of this in favor of unthinking immediate response to stimuli. But the primary strength of games largely rest in the ways that various pressures and mechanics allow us to not only feel in the zone, but also in the moment. That's the fundamental failure of flow as a concept. It is amazingly self-limiting to a medium that is still incredibly young and trying to find itself. Holding up flow as a chief design concern doesn't just run the risk of homogenizing experiences by making them adhere to a strict criteria of what will and will not make it fun. It also actively discourages people from embracing games' serious potential to elicit genuine emotional responses in players. Now, I won't go too far here and suggest that flow has no place in games. The titles I've shown here, Devil Daggers, Super Hot, Drunken Robot Pornography, Doom, they all have redeeming value that's found explicitly in their play, and how that play pushes the experience to a flow state. They're fun, they're energetic, there's a real vivacity to them. But we can and should aim to do more. Discarding mastery as a chief goal and acknowledging that flow states might not be the most optimal states of play allows us to experiment. It allows us to create truly evocative experiences that treat players as more than content consumers, and instead acknowledges the powerful interplay between a player and a game, leveraging that connection to engender empathy, explore new experiences, or encourage self-discovery. I want to play games that challenge me more than just challenging my reflexes. I want to play games that expect me to think. And the sooner we break away from the prevailing notion of what makes an experience optimal, the sooner we'll have games that treat us as equals. Alright, so that was another video. Thank you so much for listening and watching and whatever you do. I hope you watch and listen. Who knows? I don't know what you do. I'm not the fun police. This is a Patreon-backed show. It is made possible by all of these lovely people whose names you are seeing all over the screen, popping by. 1, 2, 3, there's a name right there. If you are interested in supporting videos like this, or videos like my upcoming review of The Bouncer for PlayStation 2, you can click right here, and you can donate. Every little donation helps. It makes these videos viable, and something that I can keep doing without any worries. So thank you again, and I will see you all around. Bye!